Not sure how to measure your internal communications? Prove the worth of your internal communication strategy with Contact Monkey's email solution, built into Outlook and Gmail. With Contact Monkey, you will be able to track and analyze employee engagement from your inbox. Start measuring email opens, link clicks, location tracking, and various forms of employee feedback, such as Employee Net Promoter Score. To try Contact Monkey's free demo, visit www.contactmonkey.com/ICPro. I'm Sarah Jackson. Welcome to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. This season, we're closing the gap. I've tracked down the experts that can help us as internal communicators close the gap from where we are now to where we need to be. We're connecting the dots to drive value and lead from the inside out.
Your job is to advise those leaders. You're an expert in your field. You're paid to be an internal comms specialist. So communicate internally and advise those leaders on how to do things by best practice. And the value, I keep going back to this, but this value that is placed in what you do, rather than just being someone's lackey, there is so much more behind it and strategy behind what we do.
That's Lauren Ritchie, Manager of Internal and External Communications at RACQ in Australia. For our finale episode, we decided to showcase how our podcast has grown to a wider global audience. Like you, we've grown this year and are ecstatic to tap into so many more IC pros around the world. Now, last week, Lauren shared her tips on how to successfully facilitate a whiteboarding strategy session that decluttered her comms channel strategy. And this week, Lauren shares the one blind spot she uncovered for internal communicators. She also gives us 2 storytelling frameworks that empower her team to connect the heads and hearts of their employees. Now let's jump back into part 2 of our conversation. So as you're leading and facilitating, and I feel like you have such an interesting seat coming from sort of the external comms world. You know, being new to this, you're looking at this, I'm assuming, with a fresh set of eyes. If you could boil maybe one thing down that maybe a blind spot from the seat that you're sitting in, and then now you're in this spot, that one thing maybe internal communicators might be missing, particularly when heading into this new normal, anything you can point out that we should be watching out for?
I think probably one of the reasons strategically that I became manager of external and internal comms was there is a lot of crossover in the way we externally communicate our message to the public as the way we do internally, and that to have someone who is overseeing both teams can bridge the gap between the two areas. And I guess as an oversight, we probably forget that outside of our work world, people are interacting with content. They've got habits on how they consume content, and that is no different to how they want to consume that content internally. So if people are really good at skimming on their phones on Facebook and they're just reading headline, oh, I'll click that one, that's the habit they're going to be utilizing internally. So don't ignore that. So you've got to look at your headlines that make them catchy. You've got to look at the pictures and images that you use and make sure that they're eye-catching. That lead line that you use for that story, make sure it grabs the reader, because that very short attention span we have externally is the same attention span we have internally.
Yeah, so good. Tell me, again, I want to keep going on this leadership road, as I think many of our internal communicators want to take more of a leadership role. And now if they weren't a leader, they are thrust at the leadership table. Any tips, you're saying, hey, I'm now in charge of both. Any tips on things that internal communicators can do to keep that seat, elevate their status within their company? Talk to me about that.
Definitely. I think our team, we're called Internal Comms Advisors. That's the title that my team have. So it's really, and we wrote this up on our strategy day on as a key something that I guess strategy we wanted to work as a team as is adding the advisory part of our title. So advising the leaders. And that's something that we don't always feel comfortable doing, because you think, oh, am I overstepping the market? This is the CEO. Do I really need to be telling him that he should be writing a post on Yammer, that he should be, a lot more friendly and hashtagging this and hashtagging that? Is that something that would make me feel silly? Would that make me feel like I wasn't being, I guess, professional enough? But realizing and recognizing that is your job. Your job is to advise those leaders. You're an expert in your field. You're paid to be an internal comms specialist. So communicate internally and advise those leaders on how to do things by best practice. And I think by doing that, you can elevate who you are as an internal comms advisor, and then hopefully in turn my same process by advising those senior level management on what my team is doing and how they're advising those leaders. Hopefully only increases your status within the company and the value. I keep going back to this, but this value that is placed in what you do, rather than just being someone's lackey and being given the work and going, yeah, just whirl the story out on that, will you? You want to show that there's so much more to what we do than just, typing on a typewriter and put it, or a keyboard, I should say, and putting it up on the internet. There is so much more behind it and strategy behind what we do.
Oh, I love that. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I felt like this showcased your whole self. It's like in this moment, all the skills from your past till now have brought you to this, and to really shine in this capacity. I do want to continue to talk about your backstory, because that journalism piece, and I know you mentioned on our call that you have taught your team how to tell a story succinctly. I think you mentioned sort of like a pyramid. And I know internal comms folks, we're storytellers at heart. We love it. We know we got to be strategic, and we're growing in that area. But we love to talk about storytelling too. Can you talk about that tool if I am trying to teach myself, and particularly our team, with having to say things more succinctly to keep employees engaged? Talk about maybe some of the storytelling tips that you give your team.
Absolutely. I think there are different types of storytelling, as I'm sure we're all aware of. There's obviously the news-like stories that we have to get out there as something that's really important that people need to know now. And that's probably where the journalists in the room would probably understand. I presume it's not an Australian thing, but the inverted pyramid. So that being that the most important information is at the top of the story, and that slowly as you go down towards the peak or the apex of that triangle, that's your least most important information. So when it comes to the editing process, if I was going to edit that story to make it more concise, I'd cut from the bottom. And if I left just that first line, then I would, as a reader, know exactly what this story is about. I know to consume and comprehend what I was supposed to get out of this story. Obviously, as I was, speaking out previously, with our attention spans being so small, we want to try and make sure we don't miss the point. If you're burying the lead, as they say, 8 paths down on the second last sentence of the story, you can't guarantee that people are going to get there. And so you need to make sure that you are putting the most important information at the top. But equally, if the story is more of a feature piece, or if we're using the news analogy, and it is more a storytelling and lends itself to that, then I would say you write in a circular motion. So that is, you start with a concept at the top, and by the end of the story, you reference that topic again and tie the story up in a very neat bow, so that it does complete the story. It's beautifully told and lends itself to more interesting language and longer form sentences. And really, for us internally, it's the human factor. It's making sure that we put what we call internally here, our people, our staff, our employees, first and foremost, and we put them at the top and really give that human story into that circular feature piece, if you will.
I love that. Triangles and circles. That is such a great tip. I love that. So what are you most excited about when we're heading into this new year? putting all this together with your strategy. I know you talked about data. What are you guys looking at? What are you tackling? Tell me anything else about any other tips or insights that get you excited about the coming year?
Absolutely. I never thought I'd be this person, but I get very excited by data now. If you met my younger self, you would not at all think that data was on my brain, but it's very much about trying to, I guess, for me, taking over internal comms, I really want to spend the year trying to get all of that reporting in line so that we can elevate the team to the place that they should rightfully be in when it comes to the company. And so we've been exploring a lot of software. We have been exploring software like Circle that is really for us a game changer for how we do what we do, and really looking at all of those different channels that we use, all those different levels of output, and make sure that we are giving each of those audience that we have, whether they're our roadside staff who are predominantly working in a truck or a tow truck or a car, so they're not sitting at a desktop. So maybe the intranet isn't as important to that particular audience versus someone who works in accounting and our accounts department who are on a desktop. So they would utilize the intranet more. So making sure that the channels that we have, we are giving our audience their channel of choice. That's really been an eye-opener for us when we've been exploring the software that's on the market, is really about trying to have targeted audiences and making sure that we're communicating in those channels for them and how they want to be communicated with. We can only know that if we have the data to back it up. And that's really the catch-22 here, is we need the software to get the data, but we need the data to get the software. So we're in a bit of a pickle at the moment, is trying to figure out how we get that. But equally, by doing this research in what other software is around, it has given us food for thought in, if we don't get the software, if we don't get the budget over the line, if we don't get the physical resources like software, then could we be changing just some subtle habits so that we could get increased analytics? So, for example, we use Outlook and we use a couple of pieces of software to send our EDMs at the moment. We're using basically marketing software at the moment. So it's got some data, but it doesn't have a lot of data. And we had, as a habit, been writing our EDMs with all of the story in that one EDM. So they didn't need to click anywhere. They just read that, and that's how they consumed that story, which might be great. It's one piece. They only have to do one thing, read the email. However, we weren't able to get any analytics on what was resonating with people. What stories did they even read? And we were very blind by that. So by just subtly changing some processes, we're now writing what I call a sexy headline of the story, and just the first, either a sub headline that's a bit, dare I say, clickbaity, not where it's inaccurate, but clickbaity makes you want to click, or is interesting enough as a sub headline to then a button to push people to our intranet. So our intranet becomes that home, that one source of truth. But whilst that sounds, it's a small thing to do, what that does give us then is we get the click rate with our current software. That's what we're hamstrung with. So how do we work with what we've got to give us some more analytics? And for us, that was click through. So we could get that link, we could see what people were clicking, and then feed that data back to that particular department and say, hey, 80% of people really did want to know about your latest campaign. And we know that now because 75% of them clicked that story and read it. So it is trying to find a way within what we have at our disposal and making it work for you.
If you want to be like Lauren and are interested in tools that will be game-changing for your internal comms team, check out Circle Broadcast cross-channel employee communications tools that allow you to simplify your crisis communications messaging and deployment. Make sure that the right message is received by the right employees at the right time and place they need it. The days of doubting the impact of internal communications are officially behind us. Discover how Circle helps companies thrive in a time of crisis at circle.com/crisis. Now, as we wrap up our Close the Gap season, we encourage you to take time to pause and make some time to reflect with your team on what you should keep, ditch, and modify. Reflecting on where we've been and where we are and where we're going is key, as we look on to the next new horizon. Know that there are people all over the world like you, testing, trying, questioning, and learning. We'll leave you now with one more parting thought from our friend Lauren. She shares the important lesson she would tell her younger self.
Yeah, I think that's why I loved your story, because I think so many of our listeners find themselves in the situation. And that's why I wanted you to share sort of, all right, this was our strategy. This is how we're getting organized. This is how we're decluttering the channel. And to recognize that it is sort of a Maslow's hierarchy. Like, what can we do today? We know where we want to go. And I love the shout out to our sponsor. I'm sure Circle will appreciate that. And that's why I love them as a sponsor too. They are innovative and they're trying to make these things super, easier to empower the internal communicator with data to raise their value. So that's where we're in line. But regardless, I think it's a testament to your innovation. I think a lot of external marketers who come from external to internal know, where's the data? We need this. And that's why we're talking to you, because we're attracted to the innovators in the room who get where they need to go. We know what we need to do to keep moving forward, but you're always looking kind of down the road at what's going to take us to the next level and offer that consumer grade experience. So I love hearing about, though, how to get from point A to point B, because that's the devil's in the details on these things. So I appreciate you sharing kind of, we took Post-it notes and we did this. And in the meantime, we're doing this. It's such good information. So I know we're wrapping up here. I want to ask, now having spent some time in this amazing world of internal comms, if you could go back to your younger self, even with your whole depth and breadth of working in the world of communication, what warning or lesson would you give to your younger self kind of working in this field at this, moment in history?
Ooh, very hard question. If we're going younger self, say high school younger self, I would say pay attention in maths class, because I spent most of my time in maths class being moved by my teacher because I kept talking. So it probably, indicates I was a communicator from an early age, but I probably should have paid more attention in maths, because that would be so valuable later on in life, and to really know how to make data work for you, and to see and to cut it different ways so that it can tell the story you want it to tell. So I kind of wish I would tell my younger self that. Then possibly slightly older self, in when I was as a journalist and working as a TV reporter, which is a very fast-paced world, and your deadlines are daily, if not hourly, and you work really, really, really quickly. And I love that. I love a deadline. Throw me a deadline, I'm all for it. But I guess if I had taught myself the value in writing quickly is beautiful, in journalism in particular, but probably wish I had a little more patience. That's something I'm learning now in internal comms, is the value of taking a breath and taking a moment to not just go, 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 which is very much my external comms hat and still is. But it's flexing between the two, and there is value in taking a moment to pause and to question, is this the right move? Is this the best way we can convey this information? So maybe a little patience.
I love that. And to question, is this the best move? Because you're right. We are so underwater sometimes with just the work and the tactics and getting it done that we forget to stop, have a strategy day, pause, and, you know, chart some of this stuff out on the whiteboard, and to question our, what we've always done kind of thing, which is why I love having you on the show. We love people who question and challenge and push, and just I'm so grateful that you took the time, and I love your accent. I could listen to it all day. So thank you for hanging out with us and sharing your experience.
Well, vice versa. Your accent's fun.
All right.
Well, my pleasure. It's really fun to listen.
Well, any other last minute advice, tips that you would give us? Again, we've got another marathon I feel like we're all headed for. But I love that we get to take a pause and kind of, you know, change notes and compare notes of what you're doing and what you're thinking. Any last minute thing you want to share with our listeners?
Just the fact that I think sharing is probably the most powerful thing that we can do right now, because we, across the globe, we're all going through a similar-ish scenario with COVID, that people have work versus at home, or they're coming back into the office, or God forbid we have to go back home. And it's this off-on approach that I think, if we share what we're learning globally, but even within your own hometown or your home city, and to reach out to other communicators and really chat, see what network and see what's working for them, because if we just share a little bit more, I'm a big believer in it amplifies and increases your success in the workplace too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Lauren. I can't thank you enough. I love that I have a friend that we feel so close, although we're so far away. Again, I'm so glad that we got connected, and I can't wait to hear how your strategy, and we'll have to follow back up with you for maybe a part 2 in 2021 to see if you got that budget.
Yes, please. Fingers crossed.
To get a copy of Lauren's storytelling guides, visit internalcommspro.com/show notes and click on this episode.
Internal Comms Pro, the podcast, is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our theme music is Big Vision by Purple Planet Music. Don't forget to visit www.internalcommspro.com/show notes for our free resource guides. Thank you for listening to Season 4 of Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. We appreciate your support. Join us as we kick off Season 5 coming soon in February 2021. Thank you for listening.